No.
And so I saw somebody point out that actually on Easter they played more kids against Catalans than they did yesterday against Saints.
Possibly they threw in a few people for the debut in that game. If we run through the lineup, it was Jack Welsby at fullback, who is a young player, is prone to some mistakes still as he's developing, but I think he's a player that all of us should be encouraging St Helens to develop and get some game time because he looks a cracker. Swift and Grace on the wings, who are Super League calibre players, first team players, and Costello and young Josh Sim in the centres. Joseph Paolo was at standoff alongside Danny Richardson, who was a Super League Dream Team member last year. Matty Lees, Aaron Smith and Louis McCarthy-Scarsbrook with a start in front row, so they're all first team players, if not necessarily your front line in those positions. James Bentley and Joe Batchelor, the two young second rowers, got a game. I think it's good for their development to get game time. And Morgan Knowles, who is arguably the best loose forward in Super League this year, played. Kyle Amor and Jack Ashworth off the bench. They're the same players that they had on the bench against Wigan Warriors the week before. And Joshua Eves and Callum Hazard were the other two debutants. Yeah, look, when you look at that side, it's miles away from their best side, isn't it? However, that doesn't mean that side is necessarily going to lose games of Rugby League.
No. I think it's one of those, isn't it? If you're a fan of Rovers or Leeds, you are, or Huddersfield or Wakefield potentially, you are majorly hacked off that Saints have done this.
Saints made 6 or 7 changes to the side. Not quite as dramatic in terms of what players they brought in, but they certainly made quite a lot of changes to the side, and some of their fringe senior squad players who weren't injured at the time because they hadn't played or anything were actually brought in for the home game against Hull KR earlier this season that they nearly stumbled in, and then they brought a couple of players off the bench late on that switched it round in their favour. But it's not the first time this year that Saints have rested players. You pointed to occasion against Catalans, that game against Hull KR earlier in the year as well. They've been doing this a few times. Obviously this is a bit more pronounced, but it's understandable, and I think they've earned the right to do it.
Yeah.
And you're still putting 17 players out. Now, I think the problem for St Helens in this game, from what I followed of this game, was that they just weren't quite coherent enough in the first half. So when the game was quite tight in the first half, Saints seemed to make mistakes, whereas London seemed to make ground. When Louis McCarthy-Scarsbrook went in the sin bin, and it was 14-6 at half-time with him still in the sin bin, but Saints came after half-time and actually saw that period out and took the scoreline to 14-12 with 20 minutes or so left of this game. And then London did what we've seen them do quite a few times at home and put a really strong last 20 minutes in against an opposition who was definitely in the game at that point, and they've done it to full strength Super League sides as well as to this side. So I don't think there's any way of being certain that they wouldn't have been able to do it to a Saints side that might have had players with one eye on playing next week, whereas this Saints side weren't looking at whether they were playing in next week or not. They were looking at, can I impress my coach? And so actually at the time of the game where Saints were coming together a bit more, London repurposed themselves and went and won the game. And I don't think you can be too critical of that. Now, probably the highlight moment in the game was the last try of the game, Matty Fleming's second try. He'll have enjoyed this against the side that discarded him a few years ago. And it actually came from Saints being on the tack and actually putting some good play together. But young Alex Walker at fullback collected the ball really well, did a very good clearing run. Rhys Williams sort of crabbed across the pitch, found the young halfback who put Matty Fleming into a hole on a reverse run, which was a very good line with a scattered defence that Saints had at that time, and that totally sealed it for London. That was probably the highlight play of the game. It was good play all around, other than maybe the defence of both sides questionable, but good play all around on that one. And I just think London delivered in those key moments, and Jordan Abdul delivered in some of those key moments as well. He was back to pulling the strings after a few weeks where he's been off the boil a little bit. after London had been on a good run and everyone thought, oh look, London are probably going to finish like 9th or something the way they're going at the moment. He went off the boil a little bit. He was put on the bench for a game. This game, I think he was back to controlling things for the London side. And doing what London need him to do for the rest of the season. And obviously from the highlights, Alex Walker had a few inspirational moments too, and everyone likes that young player as well. So I just think well done to London. Why do we have to concentrate on what Saints did? I'd love to slag Saints off, but I can't blame him. And I think they've earned the right.
Yeah, and actually, those players should have been playing for the chance to maybe feature on the bench on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is some players in there who are playing for bench spots. Like Lees, Amor, Ashworth, Batchelor and Bentley. They're probably playing for potentially places. If there's an injury to, say, Peyru or someone who's carrying a knock anyway already, then they're playing for those spots. And they should have been hungry, shouldn't they? Yeah,
so in one sense you could argue that they should have had more to play for than, if you'd stuck Coote in on, any of these others, because they actually, Coote's going to be starting at fullback.
Well, yeah, we know that they're going to bring Coote, Lomax and Farge back in next week and probably rip Halifax to pieces. But look, Saints took a good side down to London earlier this year and lost.
Yeah. Exactly.
I just don't think it wouldn't have been guaranteed if the other Saints side had played, because they would have had the minds thinking a little bit differently, like we've talked about. I won't get them too much. And do you know what? If you're that pissed off about Saints being able to do this, expect better from your side. Expect better from my side, from your side, from everyone's side. We've lost 3 times to St Helens. You guys have been absolutely... They took the piss out of you twice this year. So, we could have all done better to prevent this from them being able to do this. But Saints have been so much better than the rest of us. They've earned this opportunity to mess around with the squad and, lose a game. But there's nothing to say they're not going to rest everyone before the cup final. Who's got them the week before the cup final?
Leeds.
There you go then. Shut up, Leeds fans.
I'm sure it's Leeds. I'm sure I saw that somewhere. So then it's only Rovers fans that can complain. But then we've given Rovers 4 points this season.
Well, exactly. The swings and roundabouts all over the place, isn't there? I'm gonna check that out, because that's interesting. That's an interesting little bit of thought exercise, isn't it? Actually, about who does St Helens have the week before. It is. It's Leeds away.
Thought so.
There you go. Good shout, Sarah. Okay, let's move on to the final game of the Super League round. That was on Sunday afternoon as well, and that was at Salford.
Yep, so it finished Salford 40, Catalans 14. After Salford leading 16-8 at half-time. There were 2,785 there, and it was refereed by Chris Kendall.
Yeah, 215 more metres, 3 more breaks, more offloads, more tackle busts. Salford were just a much better attacking outfit here and scored the points off the back of that. Individually, Chris Wellham, 2 tries, 1 try assist, 7 tackle busts, 131 metres, 2 clean breaks. Chris Nininu, 10 tackle busts, 193 metres. Daryl Alferts, 1 try, 141 metres. And Jackson Hastings, 1 try assist, 6 tackle busts, 131 metres, 2 clean breaks. I had a look. Jackson Hastings is like 5th or something in metres made. 4th or 5th in metres made this year, as well as being way at the top in assists. He's obviously absolutely running the show and still managing to do so now that Robert Louis has departed the scene. For the losing Catalan side, Braden Williami, who, do you know what? He needs to be in the conversation for centres for the dream team, I think, because to me, he's been the one Catalans player who's been consistent all year, and he's won them a couple of games with his performances. He didn't win the game in this performance, but 1 try, 7 tackles, 130 metres and 3 clean breaks isn't to be sniffed at. Arthur Romano, 132 metres, 2 clean breaks. Fujiaha, 117 metres, and Anthony Maria, 102 metres. We only had one fan view. Malcar Matias said, Cackhead selection karma A, Stupor Coach Steves. Did Smith get picked? Did we win? Use the bolt gun, Steves. It's loaded. It's you or Smith. Stand close together. Save ammo. No excuses.
I did smile at that. I don't really have a lot to say apart from, it's good to see Salford scoring some decent amount of points.
I mean, Salford's points difference is already healthy. Catalan's not so.
Yeah, Lola here seems to be doing very well for since going to Salford.
Do you know what? I think that's the key takeaway, isn't it, that you make there? Because you'll have seen all that I've seen, which is the tries and a couple of a match report here and there, and Lola here seemed to have his best game in this country in this game.
Yeah.
He's really starting to fit in well, isn't he? Do you think because Hastings plays such a dominant role, actually, the pressure's off Lola here at Salford? There's not 13,000 people all expecting anything of him because there's not that many people there. There's not...
Possibly, and he's not playing alongside Richard Myler, who's quite frankly rubbish. So maybe, more of the attention's actually on Hastings, and therefore Lola here can get on and do his own thing.
And it's kind of like a second chance, and the Salford fans are like, well, he's a big name player, even though he might have been crap there. We don't get big name players very often, and so I just think it's all a win-win for Salford, the Lola here stuff. And this game was his best performance to them for date, from what it looks like.
Yeah.
300 game for Chris Wellham.
I don't know how he's played that many. Like, how has he been selected 300 times?
Well, he had a good game in this game.
Yeah, like
his tries were quite good, I thought.
Yeah, but just historically, I've always thought of him as a rubbish player.
What was your highlight moment from the try scored in this game, Sarah?
Do you know? I really couldn't tell you.
Chris Wellham's try on half time where he took that ball out of the air. I think that was a pretty good one. Niall Evalds' try as well was nice to play with him and Hastings. Yes, Hastings. They were the ones that I noticed that looked good. But yeah, it was all just Salford executing, weren't it? Really.
Yeah.
For Catalans, this is a tough loss, and actually, when you take us through the standings, Sarah, it'll come apparent how damaging it possibly is to Catalans, this result. Yeah,
before we move on, I'll tell you a story that's linked. Well, it's linked because it's about Catalans. Joshua had to do a piece of writing about a famous French person in his French lesson last week.
Okay.
And he chose Alex da Costa.
Alex da Costa. One. I mean, he's French.
He is French. His teacher disputed it with his name, but he is French. And it was, what...
Actually, to be fair, he does qualify for Spain as well.
Yeah, I thought he might do historically, but and one of the questions was what did he achieve? I don't know. It was basically, like referring to how he must have been a very old, in the past. What did he achieve or something?
How did he become famous? What's his?
Yeah, how did he become famous? And Joshua crossed that out and put, how is he famous? And then put about how he had been part of the first Catalans team to win at Wembley. There you go.
I mean, he could have chose Remy Casti, someone, or Tony Gigo, or one of the actual. But no, Joshua had to pick an obscure player just to demonstrate his detailed knowledge of the game. What a legend!
Yeah, there you go.
So the standings.
Yeah, so Saints maintain their 10-point gap at the top despite defeat. They have 40 points. Wire have 30 points. Hull FC are putting pressure on their Cup semi-final opponents in third on 28 points. Wigan are back up to fourth on 24 points, and they're plus 67 points difference, giving them the advantage over Castleford on plus 41 and Catalans on minus 105.
I mean, that's the point, really, isn't it? Catalans are a point out of the playoffs, is what you would say with that.
Yeah. Salford stay very much in the race on 22 points. Huddersfield climb to 8th on 18 points, overtaking Wakefield on points difference. And the bottom 3 all have 16 points. Leeds are 10th with minus 102. Rovers are 11th